Welcome to Influence Matters. I'm your host, Clara Rose. Each week, we talk about crafting your message or other matters of influence, or sometimes I have a special guest who's doing something interesting in the world that I think you'd be interested in, and I bring them on. Either way, if you're building a business, ministry, cause, or brand, you are in the right place, my friend. So today, I do have a special guest. Let me tell you about her. She is a sales conversion coach, which sounds interesting already, doesn't it? And a neuro-resilience specialist. She's going to explain that to us. She has built multiple 6 and 7-figure businesses, both brick and mortar and online. And after healing from 2 autoimmune conditions, she learned firsthand that success means nothing if burnout takes over. Now she guides high achievers to master sales, resilience, and balance, which sounds like a beautiful thing, doesn't it? With 30 plus years of experience, she knows this with 100% certainty. If selling feels hard, you're doing it wrong. Please help me welcome Kirstin Carey.
Hi, Clara.
Kirstin.
How are you?
I
Kirstin.
said your name wrong.
It
Kirstin.
happens so often. I'm so
You
used to
probably
hearing it.
didn't even notice. Yes. So people always, for years, have called me Carla, and it's not Carla, it's Clara, but I don't even notice. Right? People go, "Oh, she got your name wrong." I'm like, "She did?" I don't.
Yeah,
I
other people pick
It's
up on it.
happened so often that I don't even respond. So my apologies, Kirstin, for calling you Kirstin.
No worries.
I know better. Welcome to the show. Thank you for taking time out of your busy, busy schedule to be on the show for my audience. Welcome.
Oh, thank you. Glad to be here.
So I read the bio, but tell us what
Mhm.
it is you really do, because it always is so, formal, fluffy, flowery feeling, right? But tell us like the real meat and potatoes. Tell us what you do.
Yeah, if you don't want to just cut right to it, I help clients make more money by attracting their most ideal clients and doing it without that bro, Lambo, pushy energy where you feel like you're just trying to like convince or contrive or just force people into doing something. It's a more natural approach for each person. So there's no one system I found that works for everybody. So there's a lot of boxed programs that are out there. And they did really well for a couple of years. But what a lot of people are finding is that they're not tailored to them. So I work with my clients to find systems that work best for them so that they're sustainable, so that they feel good about them. They feel like they're flowing in them and it doesn't feel so hard or like they're grinding all the time, but they're attracting and enrolling, actually converting the types of clients they want to work with, the ones they have the most fun working with, the most ideal clients, and frankly, the ones that make them the most money over time as far as their business is actually profitable.
I love that. Sign me up. Right? It's what we all want as business owners, right? We all want something that feels natural, that feels easy. And most of us don't love sales. I mean, now you do run into a few people who are like, "Oh, I love sales," right? But most of us we didn't start our businesses to get into sales, right? But we all
Yeah.
have to do sales because we all have to, you know, feed the family, put a roof over
Yeah.
our head. So we have to make sales, but so often it feels icky,
Yeah,
right?
and that's so funny that you're even using that word because I was sitting with a new client last night, and that was the word she kept using over and over too, and that's the word that I often use in my
Yeah.
marketing because the technical term of icky, but we all know what that feels like, right? It
Mhm.
feels wrong. You're sweating before you get on a call. You're worried you're not going to do all the right things or say all the right things so that they convert and become a client. And I flip the switch on that for people so that they look at sales very differently. It's not convincing. It's not dragging them over the line. It's not saying the most perfect thing so they say yes. And it's not some tactical trickery where you say something and you ask questions in a way that patterns them to saying yes. So then you ask for the sale on number 16 and then they say yes. That's not how it's supposed to work. And that's why people feel icky when they're trying a lot of these sales systems. And I've been through them all and I've been trained by some of the most well-known salespeople out there. But when you do something that works in flow with who you are and you're able to naturally step into an authentic space, it just flows and it feels easy. And frankly, and I know what I'm about to say sounds crazy to some of you, but it feels fun. And for those of you, especially if you're clients, or I mean, if you're consultants or coaches, there's a flow to how you work with your clients that should work exactly the same when you're in a sales process. Where a lot of the coaches or the consultants get it wrong is they show up and give away so much in the sales conversation that they get the client into a space, or the potential client into a space, where they think they don't need anything else. They have a false illusion. They have enough information to run off and do it without them. So that's where I see most clients of mine that are consultants and coaches kind of going sideways in the conversation in the sales call. They're either trying to do the tactics, or they're showing up too much in a consultative role, and they're giving away enough to give the person the idea that they can do it without them. And if they had been able to do it by now, they would have done it by now. So
Right.
it's really opening up that space.
Yeah. Oh, and I think because we have been told, I mean, been doing, business for many, many, many years, but I've
Mhm.
been told over and over and over, just give value, give value. So you give away all of this value, but that's true that sometimes, they walk away with so much that they're like, well, I don't really need you after all. I have all the stuff. So that's a tricky balance, right?
Yeah. And it can
You
feel
want
that
them to be comfortable, right?
way. Mhm.
That
Yep.
you know what you're talking about, that they need you without going too far to think, oh, I could probably just figure this out on my own. That's a tricky
Exactly.
space. So I'm assuming you have a process or something
Mhm.
that helps retrain how consultants and coaches and people like us work or
Yeah.
think.
So I have something I call the clarity method, but the process that I use is I sit down and I go through a system of questions that you would answer, or you as the prospect for me would answer, so that I can really get a handle on who you are, where you're coming from, and what makes you brilliant at your true, authentic, inherent core. Because we all have skills that we're just born with, and then we have skills that we learn over time. A lot of us learn over time to squash our inherent brilliance because it doesn't fit a mold of whomever it is that we're with at the time. So over time, that zone of brilliance, or that zone of genius, gets muted, and we don't know how to step into it because it doesn't feel safe, or we don't know how to make it feel safe. So this is where some of the psychology comes in for the person that's in the sales role. So I sit down and figure out what makes you brilliant. How can you lean into that? How can you let go of the things that don't work for you? It might be working for 10 other business owners that you know, but it doesn't feel right for you. It feels that icky. And how do we get you to lean into your own zone of genius? And then I create a 20-page report that identifies exactly where your zones of genius are, exactly the things that you fall into when you're more in a conditioned space for you, which is when you're in your space of fear. And how do you lean into that balanced, brilliant space of who you are to attract exactly the types of clients you want? Do it in a way that feels easy. I know that sounds crazy to some people. It feels easy. Now, it doesn't make it not hard, but it shouldn't be a grind. It shouldn't be
Right.
icky. It shouldn't be out of alignment with who you are. It should feel like it flows and it makes sense. And there should be no point when you get to the end of a sales call and the person says no and you're shocked. Like, there shouldn't be confusion in that. You should know early on, like, who's a good person for you. So you shouldn't be offering to everybody you're on a conversation with. You should be able to know that instinctively, inherently, and how do you surface that? So I take people through an entire process with that. Sit down, have them understand where that comes from within them, and then how to actually create a formula for them. Not everybody, a formula for them. This is not a one size fits all, so that you know exactly what's going to work for you and how to let go of the stuff that's frankly not going to give you the ROI for the amount of work that you're doing. And I think
That's so important right there.
yeah,
Mercy.
and I think it got too easy because there's really a low point of entry for consultants and coaches to get online these days and say that they're experts.
Right.
So I think a lot of people got pulled
Uh,
into systems.
mm,
It's an easy system. It's a
mhm.
10-point system. Just follow the system and you will
Right.
come out the other end with this. And it didn't work for a
Right.
lot of people because it didn't resonate with them, but they pushed through thinking, well, it's working for all these other people. And there's a lot of brokenness, I think, now among coaches and consultants and people who are selling high ticket offers because they feel like they failed, where the system they were
Mm.
following just wasn't in line for them. So this kind of turns all that on its ear.
And there's so many different systems that are conflicting,
Yes.
honestly, right? So you take you one I'm a lover of I love assessments. I do every assessment under the sun, I'm
Yeah.
doing it because I just love that kind of thing. And then I love to learn. So I'm always like
Mhm.
taking new courses and doing new things because I just feel like there's just so much value in knowledge, right? I have a love of that. So I'm always doing all of these things and they often are like, oh, never do this. And this other person will say, always do this, right? But so often it feels so salesy and icky
Mhm.
and even when I'm on a call with someone who's trying to sell me something, right? It may
Right.
be something that I want to buy, right? I might go, oh, this is super cool, but I can't buy from them because the process they're taking me through feels icky, right? I'm like, this I know you're selling, and I have said that to people. Look, I understand that you're just a salesperson, right? That you're trying to sell me this, but you're not listening to me or you're not hearing me or, you know, because the ick came across. Like
Yep.
I can practically hear you reading this off a cue card. That's how bad it is, right? Like
And you
that's
can, and you know when it's happening. And it's
yes, you
annoying because you want to
do.
buy the product or the service or the thing, but then you feel the
Yes.
inauthenticity in it. And then you assume when you put your money to it, you're going to get the authenticity from the program or the thing you're
Mhm.
buying or the person or the company. And
Yeah.
that's the thing that most people don't understand when they're in the sales process. If they're afraid or they're reading a script or they're in a process that doesn't feel aligned, the other person senses it. Even if they don't know why, they won't buy.
Mm.
Or they'll have
Yep.
buyer's remorse so quickly. They're going to want out of the program, even though it's the solution for them. So I teach people how to get into the right alignment, the right balance for themselves when they're in the conversation. And I've worked with people who are, frankly, all the things they shouldn't be good in sales as far as like all the checkpoints for most sales coaches, but they're brilliant in sales when they understand how to actually just step into who they are and the love for their product in a way where they're not trying to convince
Right.
or trick or use tactics. And so when you learn the process to that, you learn the process that works best for you. It's amazing how it seems almost too easy as people are just coming across the
Mm.
line. They're almost dragging you through the sales call. Like, can I give you my credit card right now? So it should feel like that. And when it's not aligned or you don't feel it coming from the person that you're on the
Mm.
conversation with as the salesperson, you get to go, you know what, this isn't a good fit. And you get to feel good about that because you're doing
Right.
them a service as well as your company and
Mm.
yourself.
Mhm.
So the one
'Cause
thing that you just
not
said that I
everyone
wanted to,
yeah.
go ahead. You said
I
something
just said
really
not
smart
everyone's
that
a
I
good fit.
no, they're not, and it's okay. And that's actually part of the job that you have on the call
Yeah.
is saying, is this a clear fit right
Mhm.
now for both of us? And if it's not, then we get to say, no, it's not. And we get to celebrate that. And if
Mm.
it is, then we just have to figure out how to make it work.
Mm.
How do we make the payments work for you? How do we do this in integrity? And most people instinctually know where they want to go with it, but they've been told by somebody, you never do that. You don't say
Mhm.
that. Oh my
Right.
gosh, this will make them think this. I'm like, let's align with how this works and let's get clear because they're also nervous on their side of the conversation because they don't want to get sold.
Mhm.
Everybody loves to
Right.
buy. Nobody wants to get sold.
So
So,
true.
but you said something really great a couple minutes ago about the people wanting to be heard. And so if you can look at every situation where the other person's instinct, they're hardwired to want to be seen, heard, and understood, that alone will help people get through a sales conversation in a more natural way. Because that's what we want. That's what our
Mhm.
prospect wants. How can you make that happen? And I teach really simple processes on how to make that work, which again makes everything else fall into place around it.
I love that. So simple. It's the thing that entrepreneurs aren't necessarily taught. And
Mm-mm.
I'm totally an entrepreneur, right? I'm some people are like, oh no, you're, a business owner, but I am an entrepreneur. I started my first company when I was 18 years old, and I have had a company ever since, right?
Yep, me
Sometimes
too.
more than one. Right now we have four companies, right? Because
Mhm.
we're entrepreneurs, right? But what entrepreneurs aren't taught unless you're seeking out that kind of thing, we're just not taught the sales side of things, right? So we like make it up as we go along. We make up our own systems, or we take classes. And I've taken a bazillion of different trainings, but
Yep.
ultimately, I don't pay attention to any of them because they all feel icky, right?
Hmm.
I just do it my own way, right? I'm
Yeah.
like, here's what I have to offer. This is how I'm different, and then talk through the things that would make us not a good fit, right? If your
Right.
book is full of, profanity or full of, objectionable material, we're not a good fit. Right? I can't be that
Yeah.
intimately involved in the editing of something that just goes against who I am so thoroughly. So, and maybe I'm doing it right. Maybe I've stepped into that thing that you're talking about. I don't know, but it's anything else feels icky. And I
Yeah.
I would rather crawl through broken glass than do it.
And you're listening to that part of who you are. A lot of people have
Uh,
squashed that part of who they are. They don't know how to surface that. So, what you were just speaking to is this idea that you have this sense of self and you have this communication that's happening internally, but you hear it. And not only do you hear it, you respond to it. Now, we all have blocks and we all have shadows around us that we can't see within. So it's always helpful, and I'm sure you would agree with this too, is to have outside perspective to give you a mirror back to say, hey, if this feels like it's not working, let's look at what could be working for you more effectively, or how do we tweak that? But if I have people coming to me being like, I'm perfectly happy with the number of clients I'm working with, the amount of money I'm making, I'm like, then why are you here? Like, I could absolutely help you make more, but if you're happy with where you are, there's no reason to go through any change to shift anything, because there is a moment of discomfort when you have to change something that gets
mhm.
you to another level. But if you're in a space where you're unhappy with where you are, you don't like the income stream, it feels too hard to get to where you are, you don't like the clients you're working with, you know there's a better way, that's the best time to reach out and look for outside feedback for people who don't have the emotional attachment to where you're going. They have an emotional attachment as far as helping you and supporting you, but your outcome isn't what they're driving for the same way because you have an emotional attachment to that, right? So it's helping people see outside of themselves, because we put up blocks, and this is where the neuro-resilience comes in, that I'm also trained in as well, is that we have defined blocks and defense mechanisms that we created against ourselves to protect ourselves from what we think feels hard or feels bad or feels uncomfortable or feels scary. And we develop a lot of those blocks in our early first 7 years of life. And then we build on them over time. So a lot of people, especially when it comes to pricing or talking about money or wanting to be liked on the sales call rather than getting clarity and pushing back sometimes on the prospect, what we do is we fall back into what we think is going to keep us safe, not necessarily what's going to get us to our goals. And that's hardwired into us. So I teach people processes to get up over on that, but to even understand that you've got those blocks. And then how do you dissolve them, or at least become aware of them so that you can do something about it, so that you can have that conversation about money, or you can have that conversation when they say, I don't have the money, this is too expensive, I have to talk to my husband, I have to do this. What do you say in those moments? And most people back off, or they blurt out something that just doesn't feel good because they were told in another sales process, here's the thing you say,
Uh,
and it doesn't feel
right.
good. So how do you do that,
Uh,
and how do you work with that and even know that's a block for you?
mm. Well, and if you aren't aware that that's there, and I think that I'm maybe more aware than some people are, um, just having done this for so long, right? Have been in business for so
Right.
long, and not a singular business, right? But dozens of businesses over my lifetime, and then helping other people for many years, helped other people start businesses. So I may have a different perspective, but I can see that there's the potential for even someone who feels like I do, that I probably am pretty intuitive, that
Mhm.
those early years and how you're conditioned to think um, are still there, right? There's still likely stuff that I can't see, um, because there it's my stuff, right?
Yeah.
Right. So somebody else is going to see what I can't see for sure. So I love that process. I think that what you're doing is brilliant. I'm so curious about the neuro resilience. How did that happen? We don't have a ton of time left, but like,
Yeah.
how did you like fall into that? What made that happen?
Yeah, that was a divine accident, I suppose. So I, like you, at 18, I started my own company out of my dorm room, blah, 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 similar journey. But in college, one of the classes I was a business major, but I also started taking all these communication classes, later switched to the communications department, because what they were talking about was more of what I wanted to learn that I thought was business, like persuasion and communication tools and the psychology behind conversations. That was brilliant to me because it gave me human understanding, why people do what they do. So I got really invested and really curious about that as a subject line. I started getting lots of really great clients right out of school for the most part, where I had Verizon and UPS and Aramark and some really big companies hiring me to work with their high tech or high tier execs to communicate more persuasively and effectively, especially in a sales process. So they looked at that as leadership as well. So I got some really amazing contracts in my 20s doing that. And then I got to speak from large platforms to large groups of people, especially business owners, on the same thing. And it all kind of resulted back to what's your ROI, what's your sales. At 10 years, 15 years into that business, I was really tired and I couldn't understand why I felt so bad. And I was gaining all this weight and all of these things kind of going sideways. And the doctors were like, oh, well, it's just hormones. Oh, it's just this. And then I finally was diagnosed with two autoimmune conditions, celiac disease and Hashimoto's. So it kind of put my entire business on its side. And it shut me down literally and figuratively. And I had to find a solution. And I wasn't getting the answers that I wanted from conventional medicine. I went through some natural medicine and I still wasn't getting enough answers. So, of course, because I'm a solutions provider, I went back and figured it out on my own. So I went back to school for nutrition and spent 3 years in a nutrition program, thousands of hours. And then I got really interested in the psychology behind health and wellness and why autoimmune conditions are what they are. And without spending a ton of time on that, essentially the body's attacking self. It means you're out of alignment and the body doesn't even recognize parts of you to be you. So it starts attacking parts of you. So there's an energetic component to this, there's a genetic component to this, and there's a psychology component to it. I loved that so much. So my husband went back to school for more of the nutrition piece, more of the labs, all of the science, and I spent more time going down the rabbit holes of the psychology and the emotions behind it, which is where the neuro-resilience comes in. Because you can retrain your brain, you can retrain your body to learn how to be more resilient in times of challenge, but you also have to learn how your specific body works so that you can reverse out of whatever your experience is. I reversed both autoimmune conditions. I did that for hundreds of women over 15 years, building a 7-figure business doing that. But the neuro-resilience part is what I still think across the board. It doesn't matter if you're trying to get a healthy business, a healthy body, a healthy relationship. It all comes back to, what does your brain see as fear? What does your brain see as dangerous? And how do you retrain it to learn how to be in a space of prosperity and health and wealth in a way that most people aren't talking about it? They take bits and pieces. How do we attract more money into your life? They're missing major pieces of that because they don't understand the neuro-resilience part, the part that the brain was wired to do, and the part that the brain was wired to see danger and not health. It wasn't wired to see prosperity because that doesn't keep us safe. What keeps us safe is making sure we're not being attacked. So how do you rewire the brain? How do you become more resilient? How do you do that through the process, science and energetics of how the body actually works? So I apply that to pretty much anything I'm doing with a client or with myself to make sure that we understand what's causing the root issue, where is it really stemming from, and how do we rewire you to do whatever it is you're trying to do and get the outside experience that you're looking for.
Brilliant. It makes 100% sense to me, right? That it's all connected, no matter what you're trying to accomplish, right? Because our brain isn't different, right? Our brain attacks things the same way, whether it's business, family, faith, whatever it is we're trying to do, right? Our brain is still the same brain, right? We're still wired a certain way. So I think that's brilliant, brilliant. We are almost out of time, but in the last couple of minutes, I know that you have a book. So, really quickly, tell us about your book because I'm just curious. I'm a book
I do. I
person.
do. So the book that I have that is the health and wellness one is Transformational Healing. I have a bunch of other books I've written over the years, but Transformational Healing was the book that we used for the process that we used with our clients to help them reverse out of chronic issues and conditions and problems. Essentially the same process is how I take people through business as well. And I never really left the business space. I was always mentoring practitioners and people the whole time that I was
Right?
working with people to reverse on health. So there's the book that's most obvious that you'll find. I have marketing and sales books out there, but I am in the process of writing my next book called Zone of Genius.
Yay.
That we will have
I love
out
that.
as soon as I can, but you know what it looks like to get a book out and published. It takes a little longer than you ever wanted to, but that's coming.
Of
I
course.
also have a report that I can do for people and some free giveaways and things on our website that if they want more information, they want more understanding of who they are specifically and how they can be aligned, they can absolutely get that off the website.
So we want them to go to evolveminded.com
Yes, we
and
do.
interact with you there. So there's can you get the free report there or just
Yeah. So there's
hop
a
on
there's a
your
simple report,
what?
just the 7 mistakes that I see happening right now
Okay.
in business with sales. And then if they want to reach out and they're more interested in this Zone of Genius aligned report, absolutely reach out and we can make an appointment. We can talk about it. We can see what that looks like and
Absolutely.
make them understand themselves and their process.
I love that. Once the new book comes out, we absolutely have to have you back on the show to talk about the book because I'm super excited about that one. Not
Me
that the other
too.
ones are probably not amazing, but I'm super excited for that one to come
They
out.
are.
So we are out of time, but thank you so much. I feel like I've just gained so much knowledge just from this short time of having you on the show. I know that my audience is going to just love this content. So thank you for being here. I appreciate it so much.
Thank you.
All right, take care. All right, guys. She was amazing, of course. If you want to know more about what she offers, do go to evolveminded.com and connect with her over there. I think if you are in business, ministry, cause, or brand and sales are feeling icky, I think she is somebody that you need to connect with. So I definitely need to connect with her on that as well. Sometimes sales can feel icky. Understanding yourself better is never a bad thing, my friend. Before we go, I have just a couple seconds left to say hop on over to clararose.com because my new website branding has just come out and I'd love for you to check it out. Drop me a message if you're interested in the writer's retreat that is coming up in September, and I'll hook you up with that. All right, my friends, I will see you next week, same time, same place. Thanks so much.